Student student from Pennsylvania. I see Singapore, Sweden. I see a seventh grader from India as well. The Philippines, welcome. Malaysia. See another person from India. That's great. Malaysia again. Very well represented group. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you especially to our international folks who are taking the time today. I know it's probably crazy different hours your time. It might be like super late, super early, but yeah, thank you all for making the time on a Sunday to learn more about the Junior Scholars Essay Contest. All right, so today we're going to have a workshop on the Junior Scholars Essay Contest, tips and guidelines for crafting a winning essay. So my name is Kevin March. I'm one of the co-directors of the contest, and I'm going to talk for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have a brief Q&A at the end. So a little bit about me quickly. I am currently a PhD candidate in history at Boston College. I did my undergrad in history at Cornell University, and then went up for my master's in McGill University in Canada. Special welcome to any Canadians who are here, but welcome to everyone as well. But I'm currently based in New York City. I have been passionate about research for the last 7 or 8 years, and I love educating the next generation on research. I've taught college classes in sociology, history of all forms, and tons in American politics. But one of my favorite things to do is really educate and help the next generation learn the fundamentals of research. And we're going to talk about this great opportunity that we have through the essay competition. For a little bit of context on Lumiere Education, so we were founded by Harvard and Oxford researchers, Stephen and Dhruva, and we basically created Lumiere Education and the Junior Explorer program. And this program helps students work one-on-one with a PhD mentor from a top university to explore their academic interests and build a project that they're passionate about. We have two programs. The Junior Explorer program it's more exploratory. It's a great way to begin and get started with research and think about research, especially for the first time. And then for a number of students who are, especially well prepared, we have the Junior Research and Publication program, which guides students not only through research, but through the academic publication process for the first time. So we have two great programs. The program for you kind of depends on where you're at, what level you're at academically, how ready you feel to take on a major project. But we have two great programs that we offer for middle school students. A little bit about Lumiere by the numbers. We had over 9,500 applications last year, and over 2,200 mentors work with us. And they worked with students through 23,000 mentoring hours. The two numbers, though, that I'm most proud of are the ones at the bottom. We have students and mentors from 143 countries, and I saw so many countries represented today, which is really cool to see. And we had over $750,000 offered in financial aid. So something to really we're really proud of. We try to make research accessible. This is one of the ways that we do that. And we're also very global, right? The 143 countries, that's almost three-quarters of the countries in the world. So we try to provide research to students and provide opportunities for learning no matter where you are in the world. A little bit about the Junior Scholars Essay Competition, or essay contest rather. So we basically we believe at Lumiere that growth comes from challenges, and we think that especially even in middle school, when you tackle big questions and start to kind of push beyond immediate easy answers, you don't just build knowledge, but build resilience, confidence, and the habits of mind that last a lifetime. So to that end, this competition is inviting middle school students from around the world in grades 6 through 8 to wrestle with major questions, challenge common assumptions, and make their case with creativity and evidence. The competition is free and open worldwide, so it's a celebration of our rising thinkers. It's a sandbox for new, bold ideas, and hopefully, we hope that it continues your educational journey and reflects our mission to empower the next generation of scholars. So again, the competition is free and it's open to everyone in the world, no matter where you are. Okay, a little bit about last year's competition. In 2025, we received over 1,100 submissions, so that was really, really cool to see. There's so many so many great essays. We had 53 countries represented, so hopefully we'll have even more this year. But already that was really really fun to see. And then over $300,000 in scholarships awarded. So we were really excited by this, but we hope to go even bigger this year. We have a really great international competition, and we have some great prompts for you all. So today, what I want to cover is we talked a little bit about the context. We want to understand some of the prompts, and then judging criteria is third. We want to talk about how you'll be evaluated when you submit essays. Building strong arguments is fourth. So how to actually craft a strong argumentative essay, what citations you'll need to succeed and be competitive, and what sources you should look at. Sixth is writing style. So how to write, an academic style paper versus maybe something less formal or less, less strictly academic. We have an AI and originality policy that we're going to cover just so that we're all on the same page about that. And then finally, just basic submission guidelines for, basically how to submit your paper, the logistical side of entering the competition. So we have a wide range of awards. We have, of course, the Gold Award, which is a $300 cash scholarship, and a $26.90 scholarship to any junior research scholars program. So that'll cover the Junior Explorer program tuition if you're interested in that, or it could go towards the Junior Research and Publication program. We have two silver awards, so the $200 cash award and a $2,000 scholarship. The bronze awards, which are $100 cash and a $1,350 scholarship that can go towards any program. Honorable mention is $1,000, and excellence is $750. Distinction is $500 scholarship, and Rising Scholars Awards is also a $250 scholarship. So these are, the non-placing ones are all scholarship money. I will say that, regardless of whether you win or not, I think this is a really valuable educational experience. It's a great way to, to basically sharpen your ideas, to learn how to do a research paper, often for the first time for a lot of you. So, hopefully you place, but if not, I think it's still a really worthwhile process, and you're still learning, hopefully a lot about how to do research and how to think about bigger questions for the first time. So we have an academic advisory board for this, and our judges. So we have great faculty from the University of Cambridge. We have Brown, Columbia, and Dartmouth, as in Oxford as well. So a lot of professors in a wide variety of fields. They're all, a lot of them cover STEM. Some of them are in humanities or social sciences. So really some of the brightest educators in the country, and even in the world, with the two UK institutions. So really smart people reading your work, and it's in some ways like a really great way to have, like, a great opportunity to have your work be seriously evaluated by this collection of scholars. So a little bit about the 5 prompts this year. So we have a wide ranging set of prompts that are hopefully covering different fields, and hopefully that there will be one that appeals to you. So the first prompt is about foreign intervention. To what extent should foreign countries intervene when a nation commits domestic atrocities? So we've seen examples of mass violence when a government harms its own people, ethnic persecution. Do other nations have a right or duty to step in? I think this is a great prompt on international law, national sovereignty versus internationalism. And it definitely draws on fields of history, social sciences, and maybe political theory, as well as ethics. The second prompt is, how might art be a catalyst for social change? So a little bit of a change of pace, right? But this is a really cool one. You can see, we know that throughout history, music, literature, visual art, and film have shaped public opinion and sparked political movements and social movements. So this prompt invites you to explore the mechanisms through which art influences society, and to argue how powerful or limited that influence really is. So if you're kind of more culturally oriented, this might be a great one to pursue. If you're an artist, of course, you could certainly think about that, and integrate that into your answer for this prompt. The third prompt is, if you invented something that could save millions but also kill millions, would you share it? So this is kind of an intersection of ethics, science, and responsibility. We've seen nuclear technology in the past, certain research, maybe even AI one day, right? We never know. So breakthroughs with a ton of promise, but also enormous peril. what moral obligations does someone who invents this technology carry, and how do we decide as a society how this knowledge is used? So this again brings in some science. It certainly brings in ethics and questions of political or social responsibility as well. The fourth question, or the fourth prompt, is which should rich countries bear more of the cost of solving the climate crisis, rather. So this is a climate justice prompt. We've seen that wealthy nations have historically contributed the most to greenhouse gas emissions, but developing countries often face the hardest consequences of climate change. So this prompt is asking you about that. It sort of thinks, again, it's kind of at the intersection of science, particularly environmental science, as well as ethics and fairness. So we see questions of historical responsibility, global cooperation, and things like that. So a great prompt at the intersection of social sciences, politics, and certainly environmental science and STEM as well. And then finally, we have, should we be spending billions on space exploration when the problems on Earth remain unsolved? Again, this one is, balancing kind of public policy, maybe, thinking about how governments and private companies invest enormous sums in space programs while, at home we still lack clean water, quality education, or basic healthcare in many situations. So is this a worthy priority? Is it a dangerous distraction? Is it a costly misstep or something else entirely? So I think this is a great way to think about futurism, right? What the future consequences of something will be. A lot of, certainly science, but also public policy, and maybe even like sociology or psychology as well. So a lot of great ways to think about this prompt. So which prompt interests you the most? What are you most interested in? Did any of these resonate with you? Are you excited by any of these? What do you guys think? I see the third, number five, three, two, number five. It's hard to argue with space travel. That's pretty cool. Three, four. Someone already did number three. I think these are great. Yeah, I think a lot of these are really rich prompts. You'll there are, lots of different ways to answer each of them, and I think you'll have hopefully a really productive time doing that. So yeah, very very cool. And I think there's so many great ways to tackle these, and we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. So how is the essay going to be judged, though? We're going to talk a little bit about that. We introduced our judges briefly, but you want to talk about how the essay will be judged. So the first factor is originality, and there are five total criteria. The first factor is originality. Does your essay offer a fresh perspective or argument that leaves the judge still thinking about it days later? So bringing some sort of distinct viewpoint or fresh insights is going to be really key. I've been a judge previously. I've seen, essays kind of essentially saying the same thing over and over, and seeing kind of repeat entries. That's a good warning to not use AI too heavily, especially when you're planning, because you can kind of get to the same answers. So thinking about originality is going to be really important. Analysis is the second factor. Have you dug deeply into a topic with strong argumentation, clear logic, and thorough understanding? So definitely make sure that you are analyzing and thinking about the argument itself. Don't just sort of plop evidence into the paper. Make sure that you're really creating an argument that is supported by evidence and has robust and strong analysis throughout. Make sure that you're arguing well. It's thinking about the argument and assembling evidence to support that argument. Bleeding into evidence, we want well substantiated arguments with credible integrated sources. We'll talk about what makes a credible source in a few minutes, but certainly integrating sources is going to be really key. Don't just like put a stat into your paragraph without any further context. You want to analyze it and show how it fits into your argument. So that's going to be really a differentiator for us. The fourth thing is structure, so logical orientation, clear progression of ideas, and smooth transitions. So making sure that the paragraphs build and flow on each other. Addressing counter arguments is going to be really important too. You want to make sure that you're not only making your case, but also thinking about what challenges might emerge, because we have, of course, really smart people reading your essays. You want to make sure that they're going to think of things that might be holes in your logic, holes in your argument. So you want to it shows kind of a maturity of thinking to address those preemptively and talk about maybe how they qualify your argument, if not, or you might address them in a different way, but at least acknowledging and talking through them is going to be, or writing about them is going to be important. The final factor is presentation. You want your essay to be well edited, formally written, and grammatically correct. So using academic writing skills, don't use, I or informal statements. We'll talk about a little bit about the writing style, but just making sure that everything is well written, but also accessible. Don't use too much opaque language or terms that aren't really understood outside your field. So make sure to define your terms definitely as well if you're especially if you're talking about something in the realm of like philosophy or public policy. You want to define your terms, but make sure that you take the time to edit, read twice. We'll talk a little bit about writing style in just a few minutes. Okay, so building a strong argument. How do you build a strong argument? So there are a couple steps that really kind of lead to success in our experience. So choosing and analyzing one prompt carefully. So definitely hone in on a prompt, think about it, take the time to think about which essay you want to write, and choose a prompt carefully. You want to read widely, so you want to look at academic sources from places like Google Scholar, Perplexity, or your library to identify key perspectives. And this will help you build and develop your own argument. So for Group A, for example, Group A believes in X, Group B believes in Y. And this is kind of where you would want to think about different perspectives on the issue. And maybe combining those or comparing those might be a good basis of your essay. Supporting and analyzing your evidence. So every argument needs evidence, and each paragraph after your introduction should support your thesis in some way, especially through providing evidence and analyzing it as well. Addressing counter arguments, something I just mentioned, right? You want to make sure that you're explaining talking through arguments against your point, right? You want to talk through those. You want to address those without, if it's not an overwhelming counter argument that totally undermines you, right? You want to at least talk through it and show that you're thinking in a nuanced way. Again, your panel of judges is very, very bright, and they're going to anticipate some of those counter arguments. So making sure that you address those is going to be really key. The fifth thing is stepping away. Just make sure to review and rewrite, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking time, give yourself time to write the first draft, maybe take a few days off from it, and then return and review. And you'll find a lot more clarity that way. And make sure that all of your logic is sharp. You'll find any typos, hopefully, and everything, everything will get more polished. So definitely give yourself the time to step away and rewrite parts of the essay and write more than one draft. Okay, so let's talk about a sample case study, right? This is not one of the prompts for this year, but the prompt, a prompt that we came up with was, how should schools balance the importance of grades with the goal of encouraging creativity and curiosity? So how would you tackle this? The first thing you would do is introduce the dilemma. You would explain how grades help measure learning, but also stress or they can also cause stress or discourage curiosity. So this is a good way of acknowledging the multifaceted and complex nature of the prompt, right? There's a balance that has to be struck, right? Structuring your argument using a guiding framework. It could be a growth mindset. It could be intrinsic motivation. It could be educational policy or something like that. So finding some sort of framework to structure your argument. Presenting evidence or examples. So you want to use valid research findings from credible sources, educational reports or other examples from school data. Comparing case studies. So we're always up for comparisons, especially if you're maybe if you're international, you could compare like a U.S. versus an international school, or it could be different regions. But describing how some schools are reducing the weight of grades while others are perhaps emphasizing them even more. Addressing counter arguments, right? So what are some contexts that grades are actually useful, right? Why are they sometimes important? You don't want to be like, grades are always terrible, they're always useless. You want to make sure that you're thinking in a nuanced way about the process of grades and what they can actually achieve, as well as their limitations. Concluding with recommendations. So making some preliminary recommendations, and the conclusion's a good idea. It shows that you're synthesizing the information and thinking about it seriously, and then also it shows that you're thinking about next steps and you're oriented towards the future. So you don't need to have the full solution for solving this problem, but if you do have some preliminary ideas, it can be a really good thing to include in your conclusion. Okay, so what makes strong arguments? Following a clear line of reasoning is the first thing. So you want to make sure that all your evidence and claims connect logically. So if you make a claim, for example, in a paragraph, you want to be supporting that with evidence in that same paragraph. Making sure that each point builds on the previous one and there's no major gaps or leaps, in the logic. That's something to keep in mind as well, especially when you have a thesis or an argument. You want to make sure that each claim builds on the evidence towards it. Second is addressing counter arguments. You want to make sure that you're acknowledging opposing views to show that you've thought critically. So again, this is kind of a nuance. Having acknowledging counter arguments as a sign of a nuanced argument, and explaining why your argument still stands after considering these possibilities. So it might be that things about your argument are qualified, right? Like if we go back to this example, some things about having sometimes grades are good in some contexts, but maybe you say for the majority of students they're not as useful. And then finally, using credible sources. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but using facts, studies, and data from credible experts or institutions, and avoid relying only on personal opinions or unverified claims. So, looking at credible sources, there are different criteria for this. So, there's peer reviewed. This is really important. So, any published journals like Nature or Lancet or any academic journals are going to be peer reviewed. So, that means that they're read by multiple experts before publication. And this is the sign of the highest level of sort of rigor in terms of academics. Author expertise, you want to make sure that the author's qualifications, you want to see who the author is and check their qualifications. So ideally, you're finding, university experts, PhD holders, or other experts in your field. The reputation of the publisher is really important. So it could be, a university press or a major publishing house. It could also be a government body like the World Health Organization or the U.S. Census Bureau. These are trusted publishers and trusted organizations that disseminate information. You want to consider the purpose of the source as well. So ensuring that the source is objective and research focused and not only opinion or promotional material. Academic papers are the classic sort of most as objective as possible and as research focused as possible pieces, whereas places like advocacy websites are not as good. They might include sources, but they're always going to be kind of reaching a conclusion that is pre decided before it's written. So if you get your sources from stopspacetravel.com or something, you're not going to get good answers for the fifth prompt. Whereas looking at academic papers and really seriously weighing the costs and benefits is going to be key. Recency, so we can see up to date information. So not everything that's a little bit older is bad, but especially anything around AI or technology, you want to find the most up to date studies. So recent publications, the latest data, if it's available, looking for those things. Evidence support, so data backed reference claims with citations. You want to make sure that statistics, experiments, reference studies are part of what is happening in your paper that you use. So that means that if it's humanities, it might be having footnotes and having links to primary sources. If it's more social science or STEM, it might be a rigorous statistical study or an experiment. Transparency, being clear about methodology and sourcing. So some sort of detailed explanation of the research methods is going to be a way of identifying a credible research study, because that has to be disclosed for transparency reasons. Okay, we're going to play a game now. So comment in the chat whether you think Wikipedia is credible or not credible as a source. What do you guys think? Maybe. I see not credible. Not credible, no. Not credible. Unreliable. Okay. People can change it. Not at all. Unreliable. Not credible. Can be edited. Some citation might be, but isn't. Okay, we're gonna talk about that example in just a second. We're gonna come back to Wikipedia, but what about a government or international organization report, like one from UNICEF or the World Bank? What do you guys think? Credible. Okay. Yes. Credible. Probably biased. Credible. See, government is credible, or .gov is credible. Yep. Okay, mostly credible. How about textbooks? What do we think of textbooks? No. Credible for sure. Textbooks are credible. Depends on the author and publisher. Depends on how old they are. Mostly credible, sure. Credible, but not all the info is displayed. Credible. It's good to see you guys are thinking about this critically. Yep, I see that. TikTok. What do you guys think of TikTok? No, not credible. Huge no. Good. Unreliable. Not at all. Not for this. People can make stuff up. Sometimes. Why is that even? It's not even an option. I'd like to hear that. Great. And then finally, what about personal blogs from a famous professor? What do we think about that? Personal, no. Possibly, maybe credible. It depends. Possible, maybe credible, unreliable. Professor is biased. These can seep through. Yes, but it could be biased. Sure. Okay. So, and then finally, the New York Times. What do you guys think of the New York Times? See a mix. Could be biased. Yes. Credible, but not always reliable. Sometimes. Possibly depends on the topic. Credibility. Yep. Depends. Could be credible. Sometimes. Could have credible information. Sure. Okay. So great. So that great answers. I liked the especially the qualified answers about some of these. But there's here's a list of free and credible sources, and then we'll talk about sources that aren't necessarily terrible, but they're unreliable. So free and credible sources, JSTOR, which has it's basically a way of finding all the research articles, and then ResearchGate, Google Scholar, PubMed. These are all academic articles that places to find academic articles in your field, depending on what you're studying. So these are all going to be sources of credible research, peer reviewed studies that we just talked about. Academic books are usually good. So they're, the only exception, which I think some of you raised, is that if they're dated, they might not be as current, or they might be biased in ways that, that are not as useful. So a textbook from like the 1920s is not going to be as good. It's not going to be a useful source compared to a textbook from the 2020s. Anything government, international, or international organization reports, these are all considered credible sources as well. Excuse me. Unreliable sources, I think this is a good way of framing it. So personal blogs, even if it's from a professor, they could be well written, or they could be well cited, but they're often going to be opinion pieces. So I have a professor in the history department who she has a lot of political opinions that are very nuanced, and she runs her own blog, and she cites her information well, but it's still an opinion piece. So you don't want to use that as a central source. Wikipedia can be an okay way to get an introduction to a topic, and they can have sources at the end, like the citations. You can kind of go in and find those and see if they're reliable. But certainly don't use a Wikipedia article on its own as a source. Don't use TikTok or social media. There might be, again, more informed accounts than others, but by and large, they're certainly not peer reviewed. They're certainly not within the realm of academic writing. Biased advocacy sites, right? So you want to make sure If the site's called like end space travel or end animalcruelty.com, right? That's not gonna. It might have resources that are research studies, but they're always going to be arranged in a way that is making a specific case about something, often a social issue. Non-peer reviewed or opinion articles without evidence, these are not very useful. News outlets like the New York Times, as some of you are kind of mentioned as well. Those can be, well written, well informed, but they're not the same as peer reviewed sources. So you might want to, like, if you have an anecdote or something at the end, that can be sort of like window dressing at the in your paper, but they shouldn't be the central sources that you use. So definitely rely on peer-reviewed sources and make sure that you're looking at them, whether they're journal articles, academic books in a lot of cases, or government reports. Okay, a little bit about citations. So, when should you use citations? So, the short answer is whenever you use facts, statistics, or data from a specific source. So, whenever you're pulling from someone else's ideas or data, you should be citing them. Whenever you quote or paraphrase someone else's ideas, even paraphrasing is important, right? You want to make sure that you're citing them. And then when you refer to a theory, model, or academic argument, that's key as well. So we use MLA 8th edition format. So that means that we'll have a chart in just a minute about how to cite. It's also pretty readily available online, but make sure you're using MLA 8th edition. So you want to use in-text citations following any information or quote. So if you're citing John Smith, The History of Space Travel, you might use Smith 452. You can do this whether it's online or a written source. You should make sure that the citations actually match between the in-text and reference list. So you should have the full textbook name in your references list if it's cited anywhere, or the full source in your references list if it's cited anywhere within your paper. So just a quick guide to the MLA 8th edition citation. You can see these are the ways that you would cite, for example, an academic journal article, a book, a government report, or a website. Again, don't stress about copying this down quickly. This is all readily available online. There are also some great tools like, Zortero. There's other tools like Pub. Like I think there are a lot of like good citation tools online that are useful. So definitely make use of those. And you can use those as a starting point, but I would always check your work at the end as well and make sure that it's getting it right. There's like the Purdue OWL, I think is another good one. But make sure that you're following 8th edition MLA format for your citations. Okay, a little bit about writing style. So we have, basically we're looking for well-reasoned, research-based, argumentative essays. They don't have to be research papers, notably, right? So you're not doing original research. You're citing other people's work. So this is not writing your own academic paper. And we're certainly not looking for, or I should say your own research paper, right? We're certainly not looking for personal stories. So things you should do are to use academic language, follow a clear essay structure, keep your writing concise and to the point, use active voice, and ensure logical organization throughout the essay. You want to avoid using casual expressions or slang, so don't use that. Be wordy or vague. Skip contradictions, right, or contractions rather. So don't, can't, won't, shouldn't. Use active voice, avoiding first person I. So don't say I'm writing about the history of space travel. Don't mix in your personal opinions, as we saw that it's not good. That's not really reflective of the work you're doing. You want to make sure that you're citing everything. So don't just throw in your personal opinions about whatever it might be, whatever your topic might be that you land on. Okay, so we have a good example here. So this is an example of a not so good sentence, right? People today really need stronger rules about pollution because it's harmful and makes people sick. Research shows it's a serious problem. So in the chat, why is this a weak statement? What do you guys think is wrong with it? It's too vague. Can't use I. Yep. It's right. So there's a contraction there. Weak statement because of bias. Not detailed. Yep. Pretty vague. I see that a lot. I see the I. No formal evidence, no citation. What research? Good question, right? Vague. Go into more what the research shows. Lack of evidence. Yeah, you all are nailing it. So that's right. There's a lot of problems with this. There's contractions and a lack of it's not the sort of polished writing, but I think even more so, it's really vague and doesn't include a specific claim or a citation, right? So here's a better version. Environmental regulation should be reinforced to reduce the serious health threats linked to pollution. Studies demonstrate that greater pollutant exposure is associated with higher rates of respiratory illness. Smith 102, right? There's the citation. Thus, strong policy measures are necessary to address these public health concerns. So again, this is all, this is much more formal language. It's making a specific claim and supporting it with evidence. One thing to note is that there is an argument here, right? It's kind of saying a similar thing, but it's a much stronger, more academic way of saying it, and it's a much better supported, sentence or a couple, short paragraph rather. So it's still making the claim that environmental regulation should be enforced, right? Stronger rules about pollution, and then it's making, it's showing what research it's citing. And if this were a longer paragraph, you might want to talk about Smith's findings and other parts of it too. But you can see the basic argumentative structure there in the much improved version. Okay, a little bit about AI and originality. So, obviously, AI is a big part of our world today. It's kind of emerging as something that is a really huge industry as well as a big part of many of our lives. So we have a policy about AI, and basically, we're asking that your work should be original and independent. So any ideas, your arguments, ideas, and analysis should be created by you, not copied by others. You should express your thoughts in your own style and words, even when referring to existing research. One thing to note is that it's okay to have your own style. You can write in a certain way, and a lot of people in academia actually have their own styles while adhering to the rules of formal writing. So it does take time to develop this, but if you have your own particular approach to writing, you can share that with us. Don't imitate someone else's language, structure, or insights too closely. So that goes back to the point above. And then originality means bringing new perspectives or interpretations, not just repeating facts. So making sure that you're not only repeating things and citing those, but connecting facts and connecting evidence to your argument. The second piece of this is independence, right? So you're responsible for drafting every step of the essay, from research to planning to drafting to revising. Don't hire anyone or depend on others, including AI, to write or substantially shape your essay. So don't have your teacher write it, don't have your older sibling write it, don't have your mom write it, right? This is something that should be all coming from you. And AI tools can be used as learning aids, so you can use it for a grammar check at the end, but don't use it to create ideas or analysis. And again, guidance from teachers or other mentors should be limited to feedback, especially after you wrote the essay, right? But not writing or generating ideas as you go. So this brings us to the AI tools. AI tools, as I mentioned, should be used for learning aids only. You can use them for a little bit of brainstorming, although again, I think that can sometimes reduce the originality of your essay. So maybe something to use with some qualification, grammar checks, and then finding sources. And again, it might lead you to similar sources if you find it. If you use AI too heavily and make your essay not stand out to us. So nothing AI should be AI generated. So don't write paragraphs or anything along those lines with AI. So anything from Chat, GBT, Perplexity, or Gemini is not going to be accepted among other AI engines. Here's our declaration. So if you use AI, you're required to declare any use of AI tools in connection with your essay. If AI was used, you should clearly specify the extent and purpose of this usage. Any use of AI will negatively impact the evaluation beyond the very, very minimal, grammatical editing. And its extensive reliance on AI may result in disqualification. Incomplete or misleading declarations will also lead to immediate disqualification at the discretion of the academic advisory board. So, we won't we don't make AI accusations lightly, but we definitely make sure that we want your work to be your own. And basically, this is a great educational experience for you guys. So don't throw it away by just submitting something that's AI generated because it won't win and it's just going to undermine the whole experience. So finally, getting to the logistics, we have submission guidelines. So you want the essays to address one of the five prompts directly. So make sure that you're spending time thinking about a prompt and choosing it, and then being very deliberate about how you answer it. Making the essay less than 1,000 words, excluding citations and references. So you can write something very persuasive and effective in 1,000 words. So don't go over that limit using MLA 8th edition style citation for both your in-text citations and works cited list. No personal identifiers. This is something to keep in mind. So definitely, I'm sure you've always heard your teachers say like, write your name on this. Make sure I won't grade an unnamed paper, right, or a paper without a name on it. My teacher always used to say that. But don't include any personal identifiers in your submission. So don't include any sort of cover page, school, or other details. Your AI should be, or sorry, your essay should be proofread for formatting, grammar, and spelling. You should also fill out the AI declaration usage on the submission form. And finally, the essay is going to be due April 26, 2026. So you have about a month to write this. So overall, yeah, this is a really fun opportunity. We strongly encourage you to go for it, write the best essay you can, and enter the competition. And I hope that we would love. We're gonna be really excited for everyone who wins, but we're going to be really excited for everyone else too who enters and takes the time to take this seriously. So thank you all for your time on Sunday, and we can answer a few questions now. Let's see. Um, can I be? Is there a minimum word count? No, but it should be less than 1,000 words, and I probably, I would imagine like 700 to 800 words is going to be a baseline of a competitive essay. There's no minimum though. Um, we're going to share the slides after the workshop. Yep. Good ways to use AI. Good question. You can use it for proofreading and things like that. You can also use it for some brainstorming, but I would say it just gets, it can be like basically get very similarly. The essays can start to feel very similar because it's going to suggest things like sources and ideas that are, like that others might use. So I would discourage you from using it too heavily for brainstorming. Essay prompt. You can include a title for your essay. Yep. AI. Yeah, again, you can use AI to like suggest sources, but it's going to give you similar sources to what other people who are doing the same thing are using. So I would encourage you to not do that so heavily. So follow the MLA 8th edition citation. Do we add footnotes? It'll be the parenthetical citations. Um, Tom, are you seeing any other questions that?
Yeah, I'd say one last question you can answer, Kevin. It's can students use so when they finish the essay, can they use like copy paste the essay, send it to an AI and ask if it's checking the grammar? How would we view that in the judging process?
Yeah, so you can use it to lightly check grammar. I would be cautious if it suggests major edits or major changes because then it no longer becomes your voice. But I'd be very deliberate about it checking grammar and grammar only. I will say that, if you have one or two small grammar mistakes, that's not going to disqualify you. We look for the best you can do, but we understand that for a lot of you, this is your first research paper. So make it as polished as you can. Definitely give it a second read. But my you can use AI in that context, but my hunch would be, you shouldn't use it too heavily in that way. Yeah. You can use quotes. You're going to, yep, MLA citation. I don't see, let's see, any other pertinent questions? Okay, awesome. It sounds like I think this was great. So thank you all for coming, and we strongly encourage you to enter. Do your best. Try to be original. Think about the prompt seriously, and yeah, give it your best shot. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking the time, especially on a Sunday. And yeah, we're really excited by this opportunity, and we'll hope you'll enter. So have a good rest of your weekend, everyone. Bye bye.